All right, so today we're going to be diving into one of the most infamous cases in American history,
Oh, yeah.
the JonBenét Ramsey case. Um, we're going to be looking at this from the perspective of a postmortem episode,
Okay.
which actually includes some segments from 48 Hours
Right.
and then some brand new interview material.
Yeah.
So this is a really good one to look at.
Yeah.
From a bunch of different angles. It's got insider perspectives, it's got
Right.
competing theories,
Right.
and it just has enough twists and turns to keep you kind of guessing the whole time.
For sure.
So public perception played a huge part in how this story kind of unfolded. Right from the start, there was so much suspicion directed toward JonBenét's parents, John and Patsy Ramsey.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
There were even polls showing that like a huge percentage of Americans thought that they were involved somehow.
It's fascinating. I mean, that immediate rush to judgment,
Yeah.
especially in such a high-profile case. But I think what's interesting is that 48 Hours actually took a different approach. They really kind of dug into the possibility of an intruder,
Right.
which wasn't really getting a lot of attention.
Yeah. They went so far as to actually be in the Ramsey house
Yeah.
while they were reporting.
Oh, wow.
The correspondent, Aaron Morarty, and the producer were in separate rooms, and they discovered that sound really didn't travel very well between the rooms,
Wow.
which really kind of throws a wrench in that assumption that, the parents must have heard something
Right.
the night of the murder.
It's a great illustration of how, we can kind of jump to conclusions
Yeah.
without really considering all the facts,
Right.
like the physical realities of the scene. And speaking of, changing viewpoints, Lou Smith's story is pretty compelling.
Yeah.
He was the investigator for the DA's office.
Oh, okay.
So he was the one who initially interrogated John Ramsey,
Right.
but then he quits his job to work with the Ramseys because he was so convinced that they weren't involved.
Oh, wow. That is quite a turnaround.
It is.
So what made him change his mind?
Well, according to 48 Hours, there are a few things. First, Patsy Ramsey was battling cancer at the time.
Right.
And her focus was just entirely on, finding whoever killed her daughter.
Makes sense.
Hard to imagine,
Yeah, someone in that.
orchestrating a cover-up
Yeah,
while going through that.
right.
Then also the murder weapon itself was really strange.
Oh, really?
It was a garrote.
A garrote?
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is incredibly unusual.
Wow.
Especially in a case like this,
Yeah.
where you think a parent might be a suspect.
Right.
And then on top of that,
Huh.
Lou Smith actually showed how somebody could have gotten into the house
Oh, wow.
undetected.
Wow.
So, between that and his growing kind of skepticism about the parents' guilt, he really thought that an intruder was more likely.
Yeah, makes sense. So they really dig deep into that possibility
They do.
of an intruder. But where do things stand now all these years later?
Well, John Ramsey, even at 81 years old, is still fighting
Wow.
to get justice
Oh,
for JonBenét. And he is pushing for the DNA evidence to be re-examined,
okay.
but by a private lab that specializes in genetic genealogy.
Ah,
He really thinks that this is the technology
Yeah.
that could finally
identify the killer.
identify the killer. Yeah.
It's amazing how technology can potentially provide answers decades after a crime.
Yeah, it's amazing.
But hasn't the DNA already been
Yeah.
tested?
Okay.
Okay.
But John Ramsey is talking about a very specific kind of analysis.
Mhm.
There's a big difference between CODIS,
Yeah.
which is the FBI's DNA database,
Right.
and these public genealogy databases.
Got it.
It's like comparing a library card catalog to
Oh,
Google.
okay.
With CODIS, you need a very close match
Right.
to get a hit.
Yeah.
But these public databases, you can track down distant relatives.
Oh, wow.
So, the existing sample might not be good with CODIS, but it could be incredible
Okay.
for genealogical analysis.
Right.
And that could lead investigators to the killer's family tree
Oh, wow.
and then to the killer.
Wow. So it's like you could trace it back to a distant relative and then just start narrowing it down
Narrow it down.
from there.
Exactly.
Mm.
It's a really powerful tool.
Yeah.
It's already cracked a ton of cold cases,
Yeah.
but of course there's another side to this story.
Right. What has the Boulder Police Department said about all this?
Well, they're not happy
Oh,
about it.
okay.
They say that they've been incredibly thorough,
Yeah.
including the DNA testing,
Right.
and they deny that they haven't explored every option,
Okay.
like John Ramsey says.
So we have two very different perspectives
Yeah.
on how the investigation has been handled,
Right.
and it just adds another layer
It
of
does.
the complexity to this whole case.
Absolutely.
So besides the Ramseys
Yeah.
and this potential intruder angle,
Right.
Were there any other suspects that investigators looked into?
Oh, yeah, there were a number.
Okay.
One was Gary Oliva,
Okay.
who was a convicted sex offender.
Okay.
And he attended a candlelight vigil for JonBenét.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Was he a serious suspect?
His DNA didn't match,
Okay.
so he was ruled out.
Okay.
But his presence at the vigil was definitely
Yeah.
as great.
Creepy.
Yeah.
Just another bizarre twist
It is.
in this already
It is.
complicated case.
Yes.
So there were a couple others too.
There's another man
Okay.
who lived with his mother,
Okay.
and he had shrines to JonBenét
Oh my goodness.
and John Wayne Gacy.
Oh my God.
But again, his DNA didn't match.
Wow. So every time they thought they were getting close, it was like a
Dead end.
dead end.
Yeah.
Yeah. This whole case from beginning has been so overshadowed by this intense focus on the Ramseys as suspects
Yeah.
that I wonder if we missed something.
Right.
If we missed something because of that.
Yep.
We have to talk about this other controversial aspect of this case.
Okay.
JonBenét's involvement in child beauty pageants.
Yes.
This was a huge part of the media narrative at the time.
Oh, yeah.
And it continues to be a source of debate. A lot of people were questioning whether
Right.
or not these pageants are appropriate,
Right.
for young children.
Right.
And if they create this environment where exploitation is possible.
For sure.
A lot of people pointed to JonBenét's participation
Right.
as evidence of this really dysfunctional family dynamic,
Right.
especially between her and her mother, Patsy.
It's easy to see how those images,
Yeah.
fueled that perception.
Yeah, John Ramsey actually addressed this
He did.
in his recent interview.
Right.
And I think this is an important perspective to consider.
Yeah.
He explains that Patsy had just battled cancer
Right.
and wanted to spend as much time as possible with JonBenét. And since Patsy herself had been a beauty queen,
Right.
it was something that they could do together.
Right.
And JonBenét really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
He said that he was conflicted at the time, but he went along with it
Yeah.
because it made both JonBenét and Patsy happy.
Right. It's a good reminder that behind the headlines,
Yeah.
there are real people
Yeah.
with complex lives and motivations.
Yeah.
And in this case, Patsy's cancer diagnosis
Yeah.
and her desire to make special memories
Yeah.
with her daughter really seem to have played
Yeah.
a significant role
Yeah.
in their decision to participate.
It's important to remember, too, that those photos that were circulated so widely
Right.
were from the pageants. They
Right.
weren't personal family photos
Yeah.
or home videos.
Right.
That distinction kind of gets lost,
Great job.
in the public's mind.
Yeah. It's easy to forget that these families are real people
Yeah.
dealing with an unimaginable tragedy. Their lives are just dissected
Yeah.
and scrutinized
Mm-hmm.
in the media,
Right.
often without, much sensitivity or nuance.
And that brings us back to John Ramsey and
Yeah.
his determination to find his daughter's killer.
Right.
It's been almost 3 decades,
Wow.
but he has not given up.
It's remarkable.
He wants to clear his family's name, not just for himself,
Yeah.
but for his surviving children and grandchildren. And most importantly, he wants justice
Right.
for JonBenét.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
He's 81 years old, and he's still fighting for answers.
Yeah.
He even said that he still dreams about JonBenét,
Oh, wow.
but he can only picture her as the 6-year-old that he knew. He can't even imagine what she would be like
Wow.
at 34 years old.
It's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And he's not alone in this fight.
No, he's not.
Lou Smith's family and John Andrew Ramsey, his son, are also actively involved in the investigation.
Yeah.
They seem determined to keep pushing for answers no matter how long it takes.
Yeah, it's really
Yeah.
a powerful illustration of how the pursuit of justice can extend beyond
Yeah.
the immediate family.
Yeah.
And it inspires other people
No,
to
it's-
join in.
Yeah. This case has clearly had a very deep impact on a lot of people.
Sure.
It's a story that still resonates today,
Yeah.
even after all these years.
Absolutely.
And with these advancements in DNA technology,
Right.
especially genetic genealogy,
Yeah.
there is a renewed sense of hope
There is.
that the truth might finally come to light.
It really is a fascinating kind of
Yeah.
convergence of science and criminal justice.
Yeah.
We've already seen genetic genealogy
Right.
solve so many cold cases.
Yeah.
Imagine the impact it could have on this case,
Yeah.
potentially bringing closure to JonBenét's family and finally holding the perpetrator accountable.
Yeah. That would be incredible.
Yeah.
But we can't forget that the Boulder Police Department maintains they've been
Yeah, they've been thorough?
Thorough in their investigation.
Yes.
And they've challenged John Ramsey's claims that they haven't explored every avenue.
Right. And it's crucial to acknowledge those different viewpoints.
Mm-hmm.
We're hearing both sides of the story.
Yeah.
And it's important to weigh both perspectives.
Right, yeah.
Ultimately, the evidence will have to speak for itself.
That's what makes this so captivating, though.
It does.
That ongoing search for truth,
Yeah.
knowing that just a single breakthrough could change everything.
Absolutely.
You never know what new evidence might emerge.
Exactly. What really strikes me about this case is how it reflects some of our deepest societal anxieties, particularly about child safety and, the dark side of fame.
Right.
JonBenét's story became like this cautionary tale.
Right.
Fueling these fears about the dangers that lurk.
Yeah.
In seemingly safe communities.
Right.
And the potential exploitation that can come with celebrity, even for a child.
Right. Yeah, it really tapped into those universal fears that I think every parent has, that something terrible could happen to their child, even in the walls of their own home.
Exactly.
And the media frenzy surrounding the case, I think, only amplified those fears.
Oh, for sure.
And it really turned JonBenét into this symbol of innocence lost and the vulnerability of childhood.
For sure.
And then the beauty pageant aspect just added this whole other layer of complexity.
Absolutely.
It really brought up these questions about the pressures that are placed on these young girls and, the potential for objectification. And it became a real lightning rod for cultural criticism.
It did.
It sparked these conversations about the sexualization of children.
Right.
And the media's role in perpetuating those images.
For sure. And that conversation continues today.
Absolutely.
With a lot of people still, questioning the appropriateness of those pageants.
Yeah.
And you know what impact it has on the kids.
As tragic as it was, JonBenét's case really brought those issues
to the forefront.
Yeah. It forced us to confront uncomfortable truths.
Yes.
About our society and how we protect or fail to protect our children.
Absolutely. It also exposed the kind of dark underbelly of fame and the media's insatiable hunger for sensational stories.
Yeah.
Often at the expense of the people involved.
We can't forget the intense scrutiny that the Ramseys faced, especially Patsy.
Right.
Public perception painted her as this stereotypical stage mom.
The stage mom. Yeah.
An image, I think, that was fueled by those pageant photos.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
And that undoubtedly influenced how she was portrayed in the media. And likely contributed to the early suspicion. Yeah.
Directed at her.
Absolutely.
It's difficult to imagine the emotional toll that must have taken.
Right.
Trying to cope with the loss of their daughter while navigating this very complex criminal investigation under such intense public scrutiny.
Yeah.
Yet despite all of that pain and scrutiny, John Ramsey has remained steadfast.
He has.
In his pursuit of justice for JonBenét.
It's amazing.
His determination is truly admirable.
It is.
He spent decades searching for answers, refusing to let his daughter's case be forgotten. And he's become an advocate for victims and their families, showing us that the fight for justice requires unwavering perseverance and a refusal to give up hope.
You got it.
It's a powerful message.
It is.
A testament to the strength of the human spirit in the face of such an unimaginable tragedy.
It is.
The JonBenét Ramsey case really reminds us of the complexities of truth.
Its enduring power of mystery.
Yes.
And the importance of continuing the search for justice.
Absolutely.
No matter how much time has passed.
No matter how much time. I agree.
And it leaves us wrestling with so many unanswered questions.
Exactly.
Who killed JonBenét Ramsey?
Right.
What were the circumstances that led to this horrific crime? And will we ever have definitive answers?
It's a puzzle that has captivated the world for almost 30 years.
Yeah.
And that search for truth continues. John Ramsey's hope for a breakthrough using DNA technology offers a glimmer of possibility.
Right.
But even if that doesn't lead to anything conclusive, the case will likely remain
a
subject of intense interest and speculation.
It's become so embedded in our collective consciousness.
It has.
You know, it's a modern-day mystery that continues to haunt us with its unanswered questions and tragic ending. But even without definitive answers, I think there are valuable lessons we can take away.
I agree.
From JonBenét's case.
Absolutely.
What would you say are some of those lessons?
Well, I think it really underscores the importance of critical thinking. You know, questioning assumptions, considering multiple perspectives. It reminds us that the court of public opinion can be swift and really unforgiving. And it really highlights the need for a justice system that prioritizes evidence over speculation.
Absolutely. And on a more personal level, it reminds us of the fragility of life, how important it is to cherish our loved ones, and the unwavering strength of the human spirit in the face of adversity.
Absolutely.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into this complex and heartbreaking case, I want to leave you with a question.
Okay.
Considering everything we've discussed, the evidence, the suspects, the theories, the societal context, what stands out to you as most significant or puzzling?
That's a great question.
What aspects of this case continue to resonate with you?
It's definitely something worth thinking about. And, you know, maybe your own exploration will lead you to some new insights or perspectives on this mystery.
Keep an open mind. Stay curious.
Absolutely.
And never stop seeking the truth.
Never stop seeking the truth. Well said.
All right. Thanks for taking us on this deep dive.
Oh, it was my pleasure.
It's been a fascinating and at times heartbreaking journey.
It's a tough one. But important to talk about.
It is. So for our listeners who are as captivated by this case as we are, what would you recommend as the next step in their own investigation?
Well, the postmortem episode we talked about is a great place to start. They go into a lot of detail and they provide some really interesting and unique perspectives on the case.
And of course, 48 Hours has done a ton of reporting.
On this
over the years.
Over the years. Their archives are online. So you can check those out.
And for those interested in the forensic science part of it, there are some really great resources that delve into DNA technology and genetic genealogy, and they explain how it's being used to solve these cold cases. All right, we'll include links to all of that in our show notes.
That's awesome.
But before we sign off, is there anything else, any final thought or question you want to leave our listeners with?
I think the most important thing to take away from this case is to just stay curious. Keep asking questions. And, you know, don't take anything at face value. The truth can be really complex. And it can be elusive. But the pursuit of it is always worthwhile.
I like that. Wise words to end on. Thanks again.
Oh, it was my pleasure.
For joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you for listening.
Yes. Thanks for listening, everybody.
We'll see you next time.
See you next time. Yeah. It really is a case that just stays with you.
Yeah, and you mentioned John Ramsey's push for new DNA testing. Can you explain a little bit more about how genetic genealogy actually works?
Sure.
And why he thinks it could be the key to finally cracking this case?
Yeah, absolutely. So, think of it like building a family tree. But instead of using old records and photos, you're using DNA.
Oh, wow.
As the building blocks.
Got it.
So it starts by taking that DNA sample from the crime scene and comparing it to the DNA profiles in these public genealogy databases.
And these databases are different from what the FBI uses, right?
Yes, exactly. So the FBI's database, CODIS, is primarily focused on matching DNA from known criminals. And it needs a very close match to be useful. But these public genealogy databases are way broader.
Got it.
People upload their DNA profiles to find relatives, trace their ancestry, things like that.
So investigators could potentially find a distant relative of the killer in one of these databases.
Yeah, I agree.
Even if the killer's own DNA isn't in the system.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
And once they find a potential relative, even a very distant one, they start building out the family tree.
Oh, wow.
Using traditional genealogical research methods alongside DNA analysis.
So they're using like
It's like putting together a giant puzzle.
Okay.
Using DNA and historical records.
Wow.
To narrow down the possibilities.
Wow.
Until hopefully they land on a suspect.
It's incredible to think that this technology could solve a case that's been cold for so long.
Yeah, it is.
Have there been other cases where genetic genealogy has led to a breakthrough?
Yeah, one of the most famous is the Golden State Killer.
Right.
He terrorized California for years, committing rapes and murders.
And that went unsolved.
Unsolved for decades.
Yeah.
Until they used genetic genealogy to identify Joseph DeAngelo as the perpetrator.
And he was actually convicted based on that DNA evidence.
Yes, he was.
It's amazing to think that these cold cases, ones that seemed unsolvable, can now be reopened with this new technology.
Right? It gives a lot of hope.
Yeah.
Not only for the JonBenét Ramsey case,
right,
but for other families waiting for answers.
And even if this testing doesn't lead to a definitive answer,
right,
we know that the investigation will likely continue.
Right. There are people like John Ramsey and Lou Smith's family
right,
who are dedicated to finding the truth no matter what.
Yeah, it's a testament to their persistence and their belief that justice is still possible, even after all this time.
And it also speaks to the enduring power of this case.
Yeah.
It continues to fascinate people. I think partly because it touches on so many universal themes. Loss, grief,
right,
justice, the search for truth.
It forces us to confront these uncomfortable questions about our society,
right,
about child safety, media sensationalism.
And the very nature of truth itself.
Yeah, it really does.
It's a case that stays with you.
It does.
Long after you learn about it, and it leaves you with so much to think about.
Yeah, for sure. You're absolutely right.
And that's what we're hoping to achieve with these deep dives. We want to explore these complex cases with you.
Yeah.
Dig into the details and kind of leave you with
more questions than answers.
More questions than answers.
Yeah.
And encourage you to continue the exploration on your own.
Exactly.
So for our listeners who are as captivated by the JonBenét Ramsey case as we are,
right,
what would you recommend as the next step in their own investigation? Where can they go to learn more?
Well, the Postmortem episode that we talked about today is a great place to start.
Yeah.
They really go into a lot of detail
and
provide some really interesting and unique perspectives.
Right.
And 48 Hours, of course, has done some excellent reporting.
Yeah, they've done a ton of reporting
on this case over the years.
And their archives are online.
Right.
So you can always check those out.
Yeah.
And for those who are interested in the forensic science part of it, there are some great resources out there that really delve into DNA technology and genetic genealogy and how it's being used to solve these cold cases.
Excellent recommendations.
Yeah.
We'll be sure to include links to all of that in our show notes.
Awesome.
But before we sign off, is there anything else, any final thought or question you'd like to leave our listeners with?
I think the most important takeaway from this case, and really any case like this, is to just remain curious.
Okay.
Keep asking questions and never take anything at face value.
Okay.
The truth is often complex and elusive.
Right.
But the pursuit of it is always worthwhile.
I like the wise words to end on. Thanks again for joining us.
It was my pleasure.
It's been fascinating.
Yes.
And at times heartbreaking journey. But it's important to talk about.
Yeah, I agree. It's tough, but important to talk about these things.
Well, thank you to everyone for listening.
Yes. Thank you all for listening.
And we'll see you next time.
See you next time.
But you mentioned John Ramsey's push for this new DNA testing.
Right.
Can you break down how genetic genealogy actually works?
Yeah, sure.
And why he thinks this could be what finally solves this case.
Right, okay. So basically it's like building a family tree.
Okay.
But instead of using old records and photos and stuff, you're using DNA.
Oh, wow.
So you're using that as like the building blocks.
Right.
So you take the sample from the crime scene and then you compare it to all these DNA profiles in public genealogy databases.
Now, these databases are different from the ones that the FBI uses, right?
So the FBI's database is called CODIS.
Oh, okay.
And that's mostly for matching DNA from known criminals.
Right.
And you need a really close match for that to even be useful. But these public genealogy databases are much broader.
Got it.
Like people upload their DNA profiles to find relatives.
Right.
Or trace their ancestry.
So you could potentially find a distant relative of the killer.
Exactly.
In one of these databases. Even if the killer's DNA itself isn't in there.
That's the idea. And once they find a potential relative, even if it's super distant,
they
can start building out a family tree.
Wow.
And they use traditional genealogical research.
Okay.
Along with DNA analysis.
So it's like using both.
Yeah, it's like putting together this giant puzzle.
Wow.
Using both DNA and historical records.
Oh, wow.
To narrow down the possibilities until hopefully they find their suspect.
It's really incredible to think that technology like that could solve a case that's been cold for so long.
Yeah.
Are there other cases where genetic genealogy has really provided that breakthrough?
One of the most famous cases is the Golden State Killer.
Yep.
He terrorized California for years, committing all these rapes and murders.
And it went unsolved for so long.
Decades.
Yeah.
And they finally used genetic genealogy.
Wow.
To identify Joseph D'Angelo as the perpetrator.
And he was actually convicted based on that evidence.
He was.
So it's amazing to think that these cold cases, ones that seem like they'll never be solved, can be reopened with this technology.
It's a game changer.
It really is. It gives a lot of hope, not only for the JonBenét Ramsey case, but for so many other families who are still waiting for answers.
It's incredible.
And even if this DNA testing doesn't ultimately give us a definitive answer, it seems like there are people who are committed to continuing the investigation.
Yes. People like John Ramsey and Lou Smith's family, they're dedicated to finding the truth no matter what it takes.
It really speaks to their persistence and their belief that justice is possible even after all these years.
Absolutely.
It also speaks to the impact and the legacy of this case.
It does.
That it continues to fascinate people.
Yeah. It touches on so many things that we all think about.
Yeah.
Loss, grief, justice.
Yeah.
The search for truth.
Yeah.
It really makes us confront uncomfortable questions about our society.
Yeah.
You know, about child safety. About media sensationalism.
Yeah.
Of the very nature of truth.
Yeah. It really does stay with you.
It really does.
It leaves you with so much to think about.
For sure. That's really what we're hoping to do with these deep dives.
Yeah.
Is explore these cases, dig into all the details.
Yeah.
And then leave you with more questions than answers.
Right.
And encourage you to kind of continue that exploration yourself.
Exactly. So for our listeners who are as captivated by this case as we are, what would you recommend as a good next step in their own investigation? Where can they go to learn more?
Well, the Postmortem episode we talked about today is a great place to start. They go into so much detail and provide some unique perspectives.
48 Hours has also done a ton of reporting.
Oh, yeah. They have tons of great reporting.
Over the years.
Over the years. And their archives are all online.
Right.
So you can always check that out.
And then for those who are interested in the forensic science side, there are some great resources out there that really go deep into DNA technology and genetic genealogy and explain how they're being used to solve these cold cases.
Right. That's a great place to start.
We'll be sure to include links to all of that in our show notes. But before we sign off, is there anything else, any final thought or question that you want to leave our listeners with?
I think the most important takeaway from this case, and any case like this, is to just be curious.
Okay.
You know, keep asking questions.
Right.
And don't take anything for granted.
Yeah.
The truth can be really complex.
Yeah.
And elusive.
It is.
But it's always worth it to search for it.
Well, thank you again for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
For this deep dive.
Thanks for having me.
It's been fascinating.
Yeah.
And thought-provoking and at times heartbreaking.
It have been.
But, you know, it's been really important to discuss.
Yeah, I agree. It's tough, but it's really important to talk about these things.
Well, thank you all for listening.
Yes. Thanks for listening, everybody.
And we'll see you next time.
See you next time.